Well, alrighty, folks. I would be chatting maybe a little bit longer, keep the conversation rolling, but we have a lot to cover today. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to stop the jams and come on over here. Hello, everybody. It's me, Sophie. And I am absolutely thrilled for the stream today. Alright. So to get started here, I'm gonna lay down a quick... I'm splatooning it. Wow, we're thrilled to be here. Thank you. But to get started here, I'm gonna lay out a little bit of beginning information. So hello everyone. My name is Soapy. I use she, her. And I used to be a competitive player at low level for about 2.5 years. And I've mained a lot of things. It was my first time being in a competitive game. So I mained a lot of things. I started with the 52 gal, the vanilla 52 gal. Nice shellos, thank you. But I started with the 52 gal at the very beginning of the game, and I always struggled finding a weapon until I found the Tenta Brella a little under a year into the game. I realized that the reason I liked the 52 gal was because it had splash wall, and so the Brella class suddenly became something of interest to me. I realized that, hey, wait, I normally like playing tank classes, so this makes a lot of sense. And thus, I began my journey to learn all of the Brellas. I started with Tenta Brella and worked my way from there. The Sorella Brella came out after, and then a lot of the other Brellas. Recycled came out, both of those kits. And I have played a decent amount of them. My competitive experience mostly leans towards Tenta Brella because that's likely the strongest one. But I've been playing Brellas constantly for over a year and a half. So I thought it would be lovely to keep it up with hang on. Wording, phrasing. That's a lot of Brellas. It is a lot of Brellas. So I thought that it would be really fun to try and give a little bit of an explanation for a lot of these Brellas. Because the Brella class is really hard. It's like not easy. It took me months to learn how to play the Tenta Brella. Hello, Kaz. Hi. Have I played Splatoon 3? Yes. Have I ever played it competitively? No. All right. John F. Kennedy. Quoted from John F. Kennedy. But hello, Kaz. Hi. How are you doing? How are you doing today? I hope you're doing well. Ooh, new outfit. Yeah, new outfit. I thought I'd be a little bit more formal today. I think this fits maybe a little bit more of a teacher vibe. Goop game. But yeah. And hi, Keo. Hi, Natalie. Indeed. But yep. Hi. But yeah. So today we're going to be going over every single Brella. All the main weapons, all the kits. So we're in it for a little while. I'm going to start with a basic introduction to Brellas as a whole. kind of show how they're different and what the mechanics are and all of that. And then afterwards, I'll be getting more specific. I'll start with a main weapon, and then I'll break down the main weapon into its kits. And once I get those, I will be demonstrating the weapons via Anarchy Games with my good friend Axial Halcyon, who will be joining us later in the stream, aka my friend Blue. Friend and former teammate. But yeah, as I am giving the lesson, I may not be able to get to chats right away, but I will do my best to respond when I can. If you have a question, please tag me so that I know it's a question, if you have any. But yeah, thank you all so much for being here. As a quick note for anyone watching who might be watching the VOD later on in the future, as you can see on screen, this is as of patch 9.3. Brellas have gone through a lot of revisions. We're going to be focusing on 9.3, where I think Brellas are in a decent spot. I don't think the Undercover Brella and the Recycle Brella tend to not be used a whole lot, and neither really does the regular Brella, but the Tenta Brellas are in a good spot. Also, as an aside, this will not be an extremely competitive guide. While my experience is colored by my experience with competitive, I want this to be a basic guide for anyone who wants to learn the weapons and kind of get an idea of what's up with them. Like, what's up with this really weird shotgun shield weapon? Like, what's the deal? But yeah, thank you all so much for being here, and let's hop in and get through the news. And that's the preamble out of the way. We'll just listen. Let's go to the lobby. I have mini splatling up. Alrighty. So Brellas. Brellas are a pretty weird weapon in terms of, like, you know, basic shooters. It's like, okay, it's a shotgun, but if you hold down the button, you get a shield up, and if you hold it down long enough, it launches out? Like, okay, that's weird. There's a lot going on with this kind of weapon. So as for the basic mechanics, first you have its basic fire right here. You can see that Brellas tend to paint a little bit out, but they're not really focused on painting as a rule. There are exceptions. We'll get to that when we get to Undercover Brella. But as a general rule, Brellas are not exactly the best painters. Instead, they have this like shotgun spread where, like, if like only a few pellets hit it, there's like a little bit of damage, but then if a lot of pellets hit it, you get a lot of damage. Every Brella works like this. There are different spreads for each kind of Brella, but for the most part, every Brella is going to be a shotgun, essentially. Splatoon doesn't really have any other kinds of shotguns, And I think that's fascinating that they decided to put it into sort of the tank weapon, into sort of the tank, quote unquote, weapon. And then we have, as our second mechanic, the core. The core of the Brella is the shield. If you hold down the fire button, you'll get a shield up. This shield protects from damage. It protects from all damage from the front. It blocks shots directly, and it blocks for you and your teammates. That is very important when we come up to the Tenta Brella. But for most Brellas, you're going to only really be concerned with blocking shots for yourself. Now, sometimes you can maybe get in front of a teammate, and you'll be able to block shots that way. But as you can see, I'm not taking any damage here, even as I'm walking through. This is the key core strength of a Brella. As a side note, hang on, that's wrong. If a bomb touches it, it'll instantly explode. So like here, boop. Normally splat bombs take that long to explode. But if we touch it with the shield, it'll instantly explode on contact. This is very important and a part of a lot of counter strategies to the Brella. Will be often if you're like standing here and you're like holding your shield up while someone throws a bomb behind you, it'll get you. So you have to be careful of that. You need to make sure your back is safe. But it'll block all damage from the front. The next mechanic we have is the shield launch. So if you hold down the shield long enough, it'll launch out. And it'll also block damage. Now you might have noticed that there wasn't as much purple when the Brella got to the end of that, even though it was in fire for even like longer. Let me make sure I hold it down the whole time. So that's an interesting property of all the Brellas. There's a damage reduction multiplier if you launch the shield, so they'll be able to stay on the field longer. Now, for some Brellas, launching the shield will be more effective than others. Generally, with the Brella I have right here, the standard Splat Brella, or in this case, the Sorella Splat Brella, you don't normally want to be launching your shield. Since the area behind the shield is pretty small, and it moves very fast, so you have to swim with it to keep up with it. And if you have like any sort of swim speed or anything, you're gonna have to like control that speed as it goes along. So like right here, like you see, I kind of have to like stop here and there to make sure I don't get ahead of the shield. That's one of so this will be one of the Brellas that will not be launching its shield. However, if you go to something like the, let's say, my own main, the Tenta Brella, you can be behind this shield because you'll be able to actually like walk behind it at a consistent pace, and you'll be able to fire at it from behind it. So you'll be able to take space while moving forward. Be able to get up close for that better shotgun spread. So some Brellas will be using their shield launch more, and then some won't. Oh, you can shoot through? Yeah. That's another part. That is another part of the shield. While enemy ink will not be able to go through it, you can. Oh. Looks like multiplayer maps have updated. But while enemy ink will not be able to go through it, your ink will. And anyone else on your team's ink will also go through it. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this notification because it'll, like, bug me the whole time. But yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right, Natalie. This is a kind of shield where you're not really affected by it. You can even, like, go through it. Like, as you can see here. So, like, if I swim ahead, I can swim ahead, or I can swim back. And that's really important for Brellas that like to launch their shield. Sometimes you will be in a position where you're getting flanked. So you have to go in front of your shield in order for them to not be able to hit you. And then let me just skip back to the Splat Brella. And that's shield launch. Now, after you launch your shield, or your shield gets destroyed, it'll take a little bit of time before you're able to launch a new one. As you can see, it just regened right there. It's variable between the Brellas with what amount of time it takes for the Brella shield to come back. This means that Brellas are often very push and pull. If you launch your shield, you want to be able to play around the fact that you won't have a shield for a little bit, or that you will have a shield that is just launched. And the different Brellas play with this in different ways, as we will be getting into in the main weapon sections. Hi, puppy. Welcome in. Hearts to you. And yeah. Let me turn on the copy machine again, because I guess it turned off. Then another element of the Brellas is how they heal. So your shield took damage. If you let go of it and move out of the way, it'll automatically heal, even if you're not swimming in ink. Normally, if you're like an inkling, and you like take a little bit of damage, you want to submerge in ink so that you heal faster. For Brella shields, if they take a little bit of damage, you just need to let go of shield and it'll start healing on its own. Now, Brella shields regen very fast. They regen a certain amount of health per frame in a, I believe, 60 frame per second game. So they heal up a lot of damage. Like, even just holding it, like, even just like doing this, I'm able to have the shield last quite a bit longer than if at full health I just hold it. That's a concept for Brellas known as flaring the shield. You shield for a little bit, move out of the way, lower for a second, lower for a fraction of a second even, to get that little bit of healing, because every frame of healing heals like a decent chunk of health. Some Brellas use this more than others. They tend to be pretty exclusive between... There are Brellas that focus on this strategy of flaring up and moving around and taking advantage of that really, really fast healing of the shield. And then of those Brellas that tend to launch their shields. Those tend to be pretty mutually exclusive, but strategies from each of them can apply in certain instances. However, if a Brella is going to be one that likes to launch the shield, it's not very likely to want to flare the shield. Is this the famous color game? Hello, Blushy. Hello, Jill. Welcome in. Indeed it is. This is the paint game. And that shield healing. And another thing to note is that with most Brellas, if you're holding up the shield, you'll see that I'm actually moving slower while I'm holding up the shield, if I'm moving back and forth. You do get a little bit of a movement penalty when you're holding up the shield. This includes to your jump. Like, see here, I'm like not really jumping that high. Versus like normally I can jump this high. And those are the basic mechanics of a Brella. You have your basic shotgun spread. You have your shield. You have your shield launch. You have the shield health, the shield regen, and the movement debuffs. These are the core things to keep in mind when you're playing a Brella. Okay, now, how do we use these Brellas? Like, what's the goal? Why would we want to use this Brella? Why would we want to use Brellas over other weapons? So, the role that's commonly agreed upon, because it's cool as heck, correct, that is correct, but also, Brellas are known in the competitive community as skirmishers, or that they specialize in skirmishing. Now, weapons need to be flexible, and you need to be flexible in your playstyles. Splatoon is not a role-based game. You will have to paint sometimes as a Brella, even though it's not the best at it. You will have to maybe like hang back and give super jumps, even though a Brella is not a long-range weapon. The thing that the Brella does the best is get enemy attention and try and hold it. The goal of the Brella is to grab enemy attention and stay as alive and safe as possible so that somebody else can get the pick on the enemy. You're not exactly aiming for kills yourself. This is very important. Since Brellas have this shield, but then most Brellas can't really do super reliable damage, your goal is to be chipping the enemy, getting their attention, and shielding their shots, and staying alive as long as possible until a teammate can go pick them off. That is what the Brella does best. There are a lot of ways that other weapons can do this, and Brellas haven't always been the best option for this, and they arguably still aren't. Like, for example, you have blasters. The blaster class is a type of gun. Hang on. That's the blaster class, as a quick introduction, is a type of gun that you can poke around corners with. They have this area of effect, so you don't have to hit them directly on. And that is the way that they skirmish. They get to this corner, and they're able to affect an area, and that's one way they can skirmish. It's a wild puppy and Blushy and Jill. Another example is something like the dualies. The dualies do the same thing by using their dodge rolls. So like if someone is trying to fire at them, they can just dodge out of the way, like really fast. But the Brellas do this with their shields. So that is the primary goal of a Brella. Just always remember that you cannot be just one thing in any given game. You will be needing to paint. You will be needing to... So the lesson is Brella is OP. I wish. There's one thing I learned about Brellas is that they're hard for a reason. But I do think they have very unique strengths. And so I've covered these a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit more specifically about the strengths and weaknesses of Brellas. So Brella's shield properties are almost wholly unique to itself. There's not a whole lot in the game that can block shots like that. There are a few, though. For example, there's a special called Big Bubbler that even one of the Brellas has. If I place it here, you can see that it can't go through Big Bubbler. So it has similar properties to that. Another example would be, I mentioned the 52 gal before. If I go here, it doesn't go through the splash wall either. Splash walls are going to be important for later as well, when we talk about matchups of specific main weapons. But outside of those examples, there really isn't a whole lot that works like a Brella. Again, there are no other shotgun style guns or rollers or anything like that. There aren't any other main weapons that can protect themselves quite like that. Every other weapon, if they do not have a splash wall or a bubbler, they're not going to be able to avoid to just take a hit. There are no increases to HP for any of the squids at all. There are no increases in anything. You can try and dodge. You can try and hide around corners, but no other class is going to be able to just directly take that hit. Another thing is that since Brellas have more... You forgot the most OP shield, Sprinkler. Ah, silly me. How could I forget? We can talk about Sprinkler a little bit more when we get to the Brellas. But yeah. Has anyone ever told you that you have a nice, comfy teaching voice? Aww. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. Hearts. But yeah, another strength they have is that they since they have a lot more easy access to a shield, they're like the most reliable at blocking shots for teammates. So like if someone's getting shot at and they don't have like enough ink in the tank for like a splash wall or something, and you have a Brella, the Brella can get in front and just be like, bam, you're not hitting my teammate. You're not hitting my teammate anymore. Nuh-uh. And probably the biggest strength that they have is that they are a very hard counter across the board for weapons like this one right here, the splatter shot. Or other weapons that we've shown like the dualies or the splatlings or anything that has that sort of like sustained fire like this. There are a lot of things that they're weak to. It's genuinely nice and comforting, even if I have zero idea what's going on. I appreciate it, and I hope you're learning a little bit. This is one of my favorite games, so I love talking about it. but for that, it does have a lot of weaknesses. I've noted sort of offhandedly the low damage. If you're off by a little bit, you're not even gonna get like half. Most weapons don't get half, but like bam, bam, you have to be like dead on to get the maximum damage, which in this case would be 81. If you're like a little bit off, you're gonna get like 64 or 32 or like 16 or anything like that. And with enemies like moving around all the time, like you can see example here, when these are moving, it can be a little bit rough to get those done. As an aside for anyone who doesn't know Splatoon in and out, when these dummies go over 100 damage, that's when someone will be splatted. So you can see it takes 2 shots at full power, at full or partial power. But like you can see there, I was just barely off from that. Like that didn't even get the kill. Another skill that I've noted, another weakness that I kind of noted is that the barrier to entry for these is kind of high. I already noted this when I was going over my own experiences. It took me months to figure out how the heck Tenta Brella worked. It took me months of like, and to like fully get comfortable with Tenta Brella. I played several tournaments practicing, and I have to shout out in that process my one of my former teams, the lovely UFO. They let me switch my mains over to the Tenta Brella, as long as I committed to it, and that really got me to focus up and learn these weapons that I now love so dearly. So, a little bit of time to give a quick shout out to my old competitive team. They are lovely people. Another weakness of the Brellas is that without the it's soapy time. Another weakness is that without the shield, they're kind of weak. Combined with like low damage, like what are you gonna do? It's just a stick. Come on. And hi Peep. Hey Sporky. How you doing? But combined with like the low damage problem, without a shield, this thing's just kind of here. Like low damage, pretty medium-ish paint. Like not terrible paint, but medium-ish paint. It's not going to be doing any favors. Doing too many favors in that department. The Brella is going to be kind of useless. There are ways to mitigate this, especially for the launched. For the launching Brellas, you're going to have to keep with your shield most of the time or stay in a safe spot. That's kind of how these things go. Let me turn that off so that I'm not activating a bomb every time I substrafe. Another weaknesses that they have is that they kind of have a lot of underpowered kits. There's really one kit out of all of them that really works, like works super well. And that's the Tenta Brella, which is the weapon I mained. So, yeah. Probably the second best kit would be the one I'm holding right now, the Splat Brella. The problem is that the Splat Brella hasn't really been in like the best spot. It's a pretty middle of the road weapon with a lot of kit synergy. But otherwise, a lot of the others really aren't doing so hot, either due to an underpowered main weapon or underpowered sub and special combination. And then I have notes here about the differences between the Brellas as an overview. They're doing their best and that's what matters. Absolutely. I'm a believer. I'm a believer in them. They can still work. And keep in mind, if I talk like, oh, this Brella's underpowered or this kit's underpowered, a notice that I should give to everyone here is that a weapon being underpowered and or overpowered really only matters when you get to like mid to high level competitive play. I've watched a lot of analysis about this game, and really, if you're anywhere below like competitive division like number like 5 or 4 or something, you don't have to worry about it. You can succeed with literally any weapon in the game. You will be able to get to like the highest ranks in ranked with any weapon. So when I talk about a Brella being underpowered or overpowered or like in a good spot, that's mostly like my competitive talk kind of sneaking in there. But yeah. And then as I've mentioned before, there are what I would classify as 2 separate kinds of Brellas. Like I said, there are the Brellas that want to be holding on to their shield and just flaring it up and down like this. The regular Splat Brella and the Undercover Brella fall into this category. So you have the Splat Brella, where you mostly want to be flaring your shield. And then you have the Undercover Brella, where you literally cannot launch the shield. This is the one exception to the launching the shield thing. And then you have the 2 Brellas that want to be launching their shields. This is the Tenta Brella And then the recycled Brella. And that's what I have for an intro. That's what I have for an introduction to the class as a whole. I'll be opening the floor for questions and just general chatting now. Let me catch up on chat a little bit here. It is true though. They're doing their best. They're doing their best. And we shall do our best with them. But righty-o, for our next segment, we are going to be getting in to the most basic of basic Brellas, but one who is actually quite unique amongst every other weapon. This is the basis of all the Brellas, the Splat Brella. So we've talked a little bit about the differences between some of the differences between the weapons. So let's get a little bit more specific. We know that all Brellas are skirmishers. But this is the foundation. So this is the foundational skirmisher. As I have mentioned, it has a focus on flaring its shield out, kind of like this. You generally do not want to be launching the shield. There are very niche cases where it could happen. Like, let's say you're like cornered and you need to like super jump. You need to like get a super jump out. You're not going to be able to super jump. You're not going to be able to super jump if you're holding up the shield. But if you launch the shield and keep them at bay, you can like open your map and get the super jump going and buy yourself a little bit more time. Hi, Moggy. It's funny. It is funny. Why does Donkey Kong brush his teeth? To prevent tooth decay. DK. Lol. Good stuff. But welcome in. I hope you're doing well. But yeah. For the Brella, like I said, it has a focus on flaring up and down. It has very situational uses for launching, but generally you're going to want to keep the shield on your Brella. You're not going to want to launch it. The way this Brella likes to pick fights, as I think I was kind of instinctively showing here, is you want to be like fire, shield, and you want to be moving too. Thank you for the hug. I appreciate it. Why is the in-game music off? I think it's quiet. I think it's just quiet. It's playing very lightly. So maybe that's why you can't hear it. That's fair. That's fair. But it is playing. It's just very, very light. Oh, wait. Actually, I was wrong. Shoot, I had that setting. Okay. Frick, I had no sound. That's rough. Okay. It's fine. Yep, so now you should be able to hear stuff. Thank you. But yeah, stream scuff, it happens. But yeah, luckily none of my examples really need sound. But yeah. But yeah, it should be playing now. Are you all able to hear it? Just silly gals on this blessed day, it's true. It's pretty light. It's pretty light, but you should be able to hear, like, throws and throwing and the shots and all that. Is that coming through? But yeah, we'll continue on. If it's not coming through, I'll change it in a sec. So, okay, where was I? Okay, yeah, I was telling how to fight. That's crazy. Too much silliness. But yeah, this Brella is going to be wanting to fire, shield, fire, shield, fire, shield. Boom, boom. And you want to move back and forth and utilize the different the different run speeds you have in order to sort of juke them. As you can see here. Like, you can move out of the way just a little bit faster and it'll throw off their aim a little bit. If players are practiced enough, they will be able to track you fairly well, but that little bit of movement will throw them off a little bit. But yeah, for this Brella, I also have a section where I give my opinion on the main weapon. So, for what I think about this weapon, I think that this Brella is the second strongest main weapon specifically, of the Brellas. The shield, is more durable than both Undercover Brella and Recycle Brella. So you'll be able to tank things more, and I think that's probably the big one. But it also strikes a very good balance of being mobile and also being, like, tanky. So you're not gonna be running out of shield super quickly, but you're also able to move a decent bit. But yeah, and I have a miscellaneous tip for you all as well. This will require just a second of setup, because I can't really super jump without a beacon. Then I'm gonna move back to the Brella. Oh my god. You're crazy. Thank you for the hydrate, also. There we go. Bap. Okay, so when you're a Brella, you're gonna be wanting to, if you're, let's say you're just spawning in, and you need to go super jump to his teammate. Something that you can do, something that is an option that you have, oh shoot. It disappeared. Probably because I'm not the weapon anymore. I guess I'll have to demonstrate this with Tenta Brella. But something that you can do is, while you're in the air, there's a little bit of time And you can start opening the shield as you land, as you're in the air. This is very important for Brellas that have faster the faster times to open their shield. For Tenta Brella, it's not really gonna be that useful outside of like maybe like half a second being there. It's not gonna protect you when you land. But if you have a Splat Brella, a recycled Brella, or an Undercover Brella, you'll want to open the shield and it will be ready for you as you land. And that's super important because in that case, you're able to jump in to situations where you wouldn't be completely safe normally. Let's see. I think there's a question here. Would it be good to learn the basic Brella before experimenting with the other ones, or does it not really matter? That's a good question. That is a really good question. So, in my opinion, I think that all of the Brellas are unique enough to kind of have to be able to learn them on their own. Some skills transfer over back and forth, but I think they're all unique enough to where just picking the one you want and starting with that will give you the basics, but there's a lot of specifics that will need to be learned in order for you to be like confident in the Brella. So I think if you want to learn a Brella, you'll want to start with whichever one you think would fit your playstyle best. Now, that comes with experimentation. I would recommend trying all of them if you're interested in playing them, but as I've said, the skill floor for these weapons is higher than most of the weapon classes, I believe, or I personally believe. So, remember, if you're trying out a Brella, that you may not get it for a little while, and that's okay. Like, for instance, I started with the Tenta Brella, and that got me a lot of the way there, but it's a launching shield focused Brella. If I tried to learn something like the Splat Brella or the Undercover Brella, I would need almost an entirely different skill set because they play very differently. I hope that answers your question, Natalie. Thank you. Oh, got a message highlight. Meow. Of course. Of course. Expect nothing less from Sporky. But yeah. As far as matchups go, when you're fighting other weapons, the ones you'll want to be looking out to like actually go in and fight. Let me open up the weapon menu here. Your best matchups are going to be against shooters, splatlings, or dualies. Those are going to be some of your best options for taking them down. Like I said, these are pretty hard counters for shooters, especially at like a lower level. If you're gonna be like learning a Brella and getting really good at it, shooters, dualies, and splatlings are gonna be a lot less intimidating to you. I'd say neutral matchups for the Splat Brella would probably be something like a roller or a bucket, or an ink brush. Those three classes tend to just kind of, I think in general those weapons kind of tend to go even. Rollers might be a little bit different. They have pretty high damage, so they're going to damage your shield a lot. And they can roll into the shield, so they'll be able to do more damage per second if they, like, roll into it. But most of the time, if they're trying to do damage, rollers are going to be flicking the rollers. Or they're going to be flicking for damage, so there's that. And then for weapons to avoid, you want to avoid weapons that have AoE, or area of effect. This includes stuff like blasters. Blasters are probably the hardest counter to a Brella. You want to avoid blasters at all cost. Buckets are also AoE, but it can be a little bit harder for them to hit around the shield, so I'd say that's a little bit more even. And then there are also weapons that do very high object damage. So high object damage is a very key factor in this, because the shield kind of counts as an object. It has a good few properties of its own. It'll have, like, different damage multipliers depending on whether or not you have one weapon or over another. But the high object damage weapons would be stringers, splatanas, and chargers. Those will do a lot of damage to your shield. So if you can avoid those, do so. Or at least be even more safe when trying to approach these. You do not want to be caught in, like, a one-on-one duel with these weapons. You generally don't want to be in a one-on-one duel with any weapon, but you especially do not want to be in a one-on-one duel with these. And then we get down to the specific kits. Let me go back to the equip menu, actually. So right here, I have the Splat Brella. The Splat Brella has 200 points for special. And for those who don't know, points for special is just how much you have to paint the ground before you are able to get your special. It has a sub-weapon of Sprinkler, and it has a special weapon of Triple Ink Strike. Here's a little bit of a description here, if you'd like to read that. Essentially, so the Sprinkler is mostly a painting utility sub. What that means is, let me clear this up. If you have an area you want to paint, but you don't want to, like, stay there and, like, paint it all over the place, throw a Sprinkler. It'll paint it for you, and you can just go do other things. Go fight enemies and all of that. Sprinklers have some weird use cases, and honestly, they're fairly limited in those use cases. But another thing you can do is sort of use the Sprinkler to block shots. So, like, if you put like a Sprinkler here, it'll, like, take a few hits. It'll take a few hits, and you can, like, use that as a quick tool. Another thing is if there's a short wall, like this one, you can throw a sprinkler on it and it'll paint most of the wall and you can get up faster. I'd say that's probably one of the more useful use cases of it. And then we have the special. The special is triple ink strike. So when you pop the special by pressing the right stick, you go into this mode where you throw 3 markers and it'll just make really big ink tornadoes that'll like basically splat anyone on sight, like if they touch it. This is good. This is also good for painting. It's also good for keeping players out of certain areas. Wow, ink strike is cool. It is very cool. Ink sploosh. You can use it for damage. They do really good damage against a certain few specials like Big Bubbler or Crab Tank or anything like that. Stuff with a lot of HP, they have very big damage against it. You can also use them as a smoke screen, like if you want to approach. You can swim through them and hide your approach a little bit more while the enemy has to like run away. And that's about it. Now, what do I think of this kit? How well does it work together? How do I think this one is? Is this among the weaker kits or the stronger kits? Well, this is definitely among the weaker kits. So I believe that the main weapon isn't like too underpowered. It's maybe a little bit less than ideal, but it's good. I would say it's good. Sprinkler is extremely situational. Really, the amount of paint it puts up isn't going to be as useful as, like, a bomb would be for, like, keeping areas safe. There are use cases where it would be nice, but oftentimes, since its only intended function is really to paint, and your main weapon can already do that very well, even if Brellas don't really do it like the best, your main weapons and other people on the team can do that well. Sprinklers will just kind of be like generally a missed opportunity of a sub-slot. As for the special, Triple Ink Strike is a strong special. However, the rough part is that it's kind of a terrible special for Brella. And the reason for that is Brella, as a main weapon, wants to be holding its shield up as much as it can. You want to be moving around, you want to be getting people's attention. So, like, let's say you're in a fight, and let me get my special again. So, let's say you're in a fight, and you're, like, coming up against someone. You're like, okay, I have momentum. There's a few people here. I'm gonna pop my special. Oh, wait. I don't have my shield anymore. They can just shoot at me. And I won't be able to protect myself. The Ink Strike does not block shots. So you are essentially defenseless until you throw those 3 strikes or until you get splatted. So, like, yeah, I'm going in. Oh, hang on. Yeah, let me try that again. Let me try that again. Shoot, I lost a special. See, you're feeling good. You're going in. You're fighting someone. You want to leave. Okay, special. Nope. They get you. They get you before you can throw the other two. And then that's a part of your special that's just not used, and you lose special charge and have to wait for the respawn timer. Brella wants to be up front. It wants to be up close to the enemy. And triple ink strike does not. So the synergy almost feels like anti-synergy sometimes. This is not a great sub and special combination. Sprinkler is okay, but triple ink strike kind of works against the purpose of the Brella. But that's not the only kit. We have another one. We have another kit. The Splat Brella. What? Alright, question. What's the thought behind the ink strike on the kit, since it doesn't have that good synergy? That is a good question, and I don't really know. Yeah, so I guess for anyone missing context on how kits work in this game, every weapon has like a set amount of kits that are specific things. You cannot change a sub or special on a weapon. You are only able to use that sub or that special on that specific weapon. That's why you have two different kits right here. Why you have the distinction between the Splat Brella versus the Splat Brella. The Splat Brella is the same main weapon, but it has different sub and special. And on that note, we're going to be singing a very different tune for the Splat Brella. Same main weapon, same stats, same kind of playstyle that you want to go for. But this time we have Autobomb and Inkjet. And here's a little description. As you can see, by the freshness meter at the top, I have played this weapon a lot more than the regular Splat Brella. The Splat Brella is one of the best kits, theoretically, that you could give this weapon. So Autobomb. Autobomb is actually one of the cheapest bombs you could get. And bombs are very good. And remember, if you have a question, you can tag me. Oh my god. Sporky. Sporky. Silly goof. The answer is yes, but also... Disadvantage of Inkjet is that doesn't work when you run out of magenta, even if you're printing it just black and white. So true. So the Autobomb is one of the cheapest bombs you can get. This is important because you want... The emphasis of the Brella is you want to be using your main weapon more than your sub or special. So sub weapons, which also take from the same resource as your main weapon, aka your ammo, the less they use the better. And so the Autobomb costs about 55% of your ink tank. Whereas most bombs, if it got any other bomb, would cost like 70% of your ink tank. This means that Brella, even after throwing a bomb, can like actually use its shield for a little bit longer. And that is super important. Auto bomb also has a few other uses. As you can see, it sends out a signal and walks towards the enemy. Oftentimes if it's moving, if like the enemy is moving, you're not really gonna be hitting it for lethal damage. However, it is useful for scouting. If you see the auto bomb move somewhere, you know where the enemy is, and then you can go strike. And the special is a very similar case. So the inkjet. When you pop the inkjet, you launch into the air and gain powerful shots. You can dodge in midair by jumping, and then you land back like so. Now, you might have noted, hey, wait, that also takes away the Brella. What gives? Well, this also moves you upward. You know, it gets you out of harm's way. Granted, you will still be splatted sometimes, like right out of the gate, if you try to use this like directly in a fight. It will happen sometimes, but that movement makes a lot of difference. Additionally, if you're in a fight, you go up, the inkjet is a very consistent two-shot. So let me get another one here. So if you're fighting something, and let's say you're like fighting, and you're like, oh, I'm about to run out of ink. Oh no, but wait, I have my special. I can go up, that'll count as a dodge, and you will at least two-shot them. If you get a direct, you will one-shot them. That is powerful. You'll be dodging upwards, and you'll be getting a very powerful two-shot. Another advantage. Do you remember how I mentioned earlier that a strategy for Brellas, in order to get the most use out of them, is that when you're jumping into a teammate in a fight, perhaps, you'll be able to put your shield out right as you land. You can do the same for the inkjet marker. So like, let's say you pop an inkjet in the middle of a fight. Like, your inkjet marker is now out in the open, and you're like, oh crap, someone's gonna be looking at the inkjet marker when I try and land. Well, hold. You'll have it ready on landing, like so. And as you can probably hear, my own opinion of Tenta Brella is extremely positive. They hit the nail on the head with this one. Unfortunately, power-wise in the competitive scene, the main weapon isn't where it needs to be in order to be like the strongest thing. But it's solidly in like the middle of the pack. But this is still one of the best kits you could have given it. A cheap sub-weapon that you can still use your Brella out of, and shield, for a good amount of time. A lot more than most subs. And a special that still lets you dodge out of the way, gives you a powerful 2-shot, and even then, its biggest weakness, the landing, the marked landing, can be mitigated by the strength of the main weapon. By shielding on landing. That's why, let's say, something else for Inkjet is that if someone has, like, Drop Roller, or let's say you were a dually who had an Inkjet. I think there's a dually with an Inkjet, if I remember right. No, there isn't. That is rough, actually. That's bad. I'm sad they never did that. But if you have something like Drop Roller as an ability on your gear, you can drop roll out of that Inkjet launch. It's really good. I enjoy this weapon a lot. It flows together very, very well. It makes a lot of sense. You're like you're not out in the open like an Ink Strike. You evade and then you can shield when you go back down. Exactly, exactly. That's how it goes. This weapon is one of my favorites. Autobomb will have its uses for scouting out and poking from a distance, and Inkjet is useful as a mix-up option and a powerful, pretty consistent 2-shot that will also be protected by the shield's landing. Next on the chopping block, we have the Tenta Brella. The weapon that I have mained for over a year and a half. So, what makes this Tenta Brella special? What makes it unique? So, first off, it's big. It do be big. Second off, it's a heavyweight, so it will automatically move slower than the other Brellas. All of the other Brellas. You have to keep that in mind when you're using this. That being said, this Brella is still a frontline. How can that be? Well, Tenta Brella's shield has the most health of any Brella. It is the tankiest Brella. It will be able to take the most shots from the most things. It does not break immediately on bombs. It will take immensely longer to break with anything. I believe it doesn't break with one charger shot. Like, see that? It didn't break. It didn't break with the bomb there. And it will just, in general, take a lot more to take this out. Not being one-shot seems huge. It is, yeah. There's a reason that this Brella is commonly considered to be the best one. The shield, when extreme enough, can be a powerful attribute. I forgot to say that normal Brella specials are actually pretty good. Tri-Strike is good for displacing the enemy and giving us a chance to push in, and Inkjet is always nice for creating space. That's true, yeah. While the Tri-Strike is not exactly the best for the Brella user itself, it is a nice special to have for the team in general. And yeah, Inkjet's just always good to have. But yeah, with the Tenta Brella, another very, very, very important thing about the Tenta Brella is you might have noticed already, but it can one-shot. It is the only Brella that can one-shot anything. This is also huge. So the general game plan for this Brella is you want to walk behind the shield, get as close as you can to get a consistent one-shot. Twice the murdering in the same time. Indeed. Now there are downsides to this. One is how slow it is. So it's not going to be moving that fast. So it'll be pretty predictable. Especially once the shield is launched. Another is that the one-shot is just also really hard to hit in general. Like, most of the time, you're still going to be two-shotting. But there is the potential to one-shot. Which is very important. But really, otherwise, outside of the fact that it's slower, you can't really flare your shield because, as a fun fact, this Brella does take longer to come out than the others. So if you're like trying to flare this shield, you're not going to have it out for very long. It's just a little shy. Yeah, it's just a little shy. However, a lot of these weaknesses are very much made up by its intense power and the intense protective power that the shield has. Now, there are a couple caveats here. Hearts to you, puppy. There are a couple of matchups that are kind of unique to this one. So I mentioned earlier about Splash Wall, right? Splash Wall is a sub that essentially acts like a shield that you can deploy, like that. Has a lot of similar properties to Brella shields, except for the fact that they don't move. And they cost a lot of ink. They cost a lot more ink than a Brella shield. Hence why the Brella shields are a lot more flexible, and hence giving them their unique identity. However, what happens if you try to, let's say, launch a tent shield, and it runs into a splash wall? The splash wall will normally shred it to pieces. If you come across a team with any weapon having a splash wall, you better look out for that splash wall, because your shield will become null and void if they decide to throw their splash wall in front of the tent shield. Or any Brella shield, for that matter. But I say this specifically for tent shield, because it is the most reliant on a specific shield launch, and it is also the biggest shield, which is normally pretty good. But even if this corner bumps it, even like a corner here bumps into a splash wall, that thing's gonna get shredded, like so bad. Tenta Brella also still has the normal good matchups, although since it's slower, it might have a little bit of a harder time with dualies. But in general, they're still good. It's still bad against buckets. It's still It's still bad against blasters and stringers and splatanas and such, things with high object damage and things with AoE. And chargers, as an interesting note, still do shred it pretty well, but I don't believe they one-shot anymore. I believe Tent Shield has enough health to be able to tank it. And also, because the Tenta Brella is a launching shield, you remember what I said earlier about how the tent, or about how Brella shields, when launched, they get a damage reduction? And how I said it's a multiplier. Imagine that for a shield as absolutely tanky as a Tenta Brella. That will eat up so much damage. Sounds like it's a lot more of an effective taunt than the other Brellas, which was one of the roles of Brella, right? Like drawing attention. Yeah, Brellas, all the Brellas serve that in a very unique way. The Tenta Brella is the most effective taunt with the shield directly. So I know you saw, like, in the matches, and I explained how the Splat Brella would be, like, moving around, you know? It can't just rely on the shield, it also has to rely a little bit on its movement. Tenta Brella is not going to be like that. It will draw attention just by launching the shield. It will command the battlefield. If you ignore it, it will come in, get up close, and bam, one shot. As long as your aim is good, which, you know, depends. Now, as for the kits, this is the vanilla Tenta Brella. This Brella comes with Squid Beacon and Ink Vacuum. It has a points for special of 190. Again, the number of points for special really isn't, like, super concerning for this lecture, but it is still good to note. This, I believe, is a very decent kit. They did a good job with this one. There's some interesting synergy here. So, Tenta Brella, it's slow, right? It doesn't really want to get, like, splatted too often. When it does, you want to make sure you have a Squid Beacon up so that you can jump to it. Squid Beacons are these little objects right here. And their use case... Oh, wrong button. Their use case is they act like players on the map. In the sense that you can jump to them. Normally, if you're a weapon who doesn't have a Squid Beacon as its sub-weapon, two players will be able to jump to it. So, like, you see those two little blinking lights? That's the number of jumps you'll get to that specific Squid Beacon. But if you are someone who has a Squid Beacon as a sub-weapon, you're gonna break it instantly no matter what. Like so. The special is Ink Vacuum. The Ink Vacuum sucks up opponent's ink. I guess I should have used it over here. It will suck up opponent's ink, acting as another kind of shield. And then you will shoot out, and depending on how much ink you absorbed, the shot will be bigger or smaller. The more ink you absorb, the larger the shot will be. Now, as far as the ink vacuum is able to ink up basically any source of damage, as long as it's like not a lingering hitbox. So even though it gets ink from the ink strike is a lingering hitbox. So it's not able to completely just take it out of the battlefield. However, if you have something like a bomb, it will eat it. Like so. Now, how does this kit work together? It's pretty epic. It is. How does this kit work together? So, Squid Beacon and Tenta Brella are a pretty decent combo. I think Squid Beacon... Tenta Brella is not going to be, like, the fastest. So having a way to set up a little checkpoint anywhere on the map helps both you and your teammates very well. Another property of Squid Beacons that's important to note is if you have a Squid Beacon on the map and you check the map, there's a certain area around the Squid Beacon that will detect your enemies. So normally you won't be able to see the enemies on the map unless they have like a point sensor on them. But if you have a Squid Beacon in an area, you will see if an enemy passes by an area. And that is super useful. It's very useful for Tent for knowing where people are, and also for just setting up the checkpoints, you know? Getting people in and getting yourself back in. You generally don't want to use it just for scouting, because it takes a lot of ink. It is a very expensive sub-weapon, so use it in spots that you think will be valuable to jump to. Now, the ink vacuum is the interesting part. That's the really interesting part. So, when you're playing a Tenta Brella, I mentioned that you're really only going to be protected from the front, right? Well, let's launch the tent shield, and let's do this. Now you're protected from both sides. This is a vital technique for the vanilla Tenta Brella. You launch the tent shield, you pop your special, and then you face behind you and essentially walk backwards. That'll protect you from almost all angles. You'll basically be like a small, impenetrable fortress moving forward. And then you will have like a really powerful shot to shoot at your enemies. So the synergy is on point. There's only one problem. The one problem is that InkVac is actually not the greatest special. And I think the main reason for that is, well, for one, the hitbox for the InkVac is a little bit wonky. So, like, if someone is able to, like, hit, like, fall-off shots or something on you, you're gonna, like, be screwed, essentially. Another thing is that there's not a way to get the shot early. You have to wait out the full duration of the InkVac in order to get the shot. There's no way to cancel it early unless you die. And having your main weapon out of the equation for that long is pretty rough. Especially when you're just getting, like, essentially two shields. Two shields and then a shot that's, like, pretty slow to come out and pretty slow to, like, actually explode. Really, you want to make sure you're, like, trapping people, catching them off guard, you know, with the shot. But that's hard to do when you're a vacuum and, like, you're making this loud whirr noise. The vacuum itself may be a little bit underwhelming, but alongside the synergy of the Tenta Brella, this is probably one of, if not the, best vacuum weapons to use, because you completely negate one of your weaknesses, aka getting flanked. If you get flanked, you'll just absorb. Absorb, absorb, absorb. So this is one of the best vacuum weapons to get. It's just unfortunate that vacuum is not the best. Might be a silly question, but is this kit more of a flanking roll or a push through the center roll? This is definitely a push through the center roll. For how slow it is, it will not often be getting flanks, but there are some instances where it can get flanks. Really, again, you want to be grabbing attention, and so you want to be center stage, where most people can see you and try to shoot at you. And then your teammates will come in and be like, ho ho ho, you thought you could just approach my teammates, but I get you. Hope you liked my dramatic rendition, recreation of that hypothetical scenario. Makes sense. That's good. I'm glad. And then, it is my pleasure to present. It is an honor to present my main weapon. Yeah! Wow! Okay. This is the Tenta Brella. The Tenta Brella, or as I like to call it, the Sorella Tent, or S-Tent, comes with the Ink Mine and the Trizuka. This is one of the best kits you could possibly give a Tenta Brella. They did it again. This one is crazy. This one is crazy. This is one of the best kits you could possibly give a Tenta Brella. And let's get into why. So, Ink Mine. You place down a mine in your... You place down a mine, and you see there's like this little circle. To the enemy, this mine is essentially invisible. It's a trap. This is a trap sub. So like here. If we place one here, someone enters the area. Kaboom! And it'll do a little bit of damage. And also track them for a little bit. It has a lot of interesting effects. Like, you have a little bit of a tracking effect. So, you know, like, oh, I'll set a mine down on, like, this flank right here. So that if anyone is coming on this flank, we'll know about it. And we could go around and get them. It's also... And because it's good at trapping flanks, you set down your mine, launch your tent shield, you'll know if someone's coming behind you, and you can be like, bam, bam, get out. That knowledge is power. Now the real star of the show here, the real star of the show, is the Trizuka. You get 3 shots in a very weird spiral pattern. That one-shots if you hit it. If you get an indirect, which let me... Hang on. Oh. Let me charge this again. Big boom. Big boom. Let me charge this again. Okay. Then if you hit indirects, you'll hit anywhere from 35 to 53. So it'll either be a 2-shot or a 3-shot, depending on where you hit it. And the area of effect is pretty big. Now, how does this work with the Tenta Brella? So, the Tenta Brella. Sometimes it can... Okay, picture this. Sometimes it can be hard to hit a long-ranged... Trizuka shot pretty reliably. It can happen. It has happened a lot. It can be done. Trizuka is strong by itself. But this weapon gives it a little bit more flexibility. Like, let's say you're, like, trying to push in. And you're like, okay, let's try to hit it, like, far away. Oh, I need to get this person up close and this person up close. Boom. You can move in with your shield, and you have, like, pretty surefire shot. It can actually be pretty hard to hit the Trizuka shot. Get blasted, nerds. But, it can be pretty hard to hit the shot up close. I will warn you, the hitbox is very wonky, but the tent shield mixed with the Trizuka is a very powerful shot. It helps that the Trizuka is a very flexible special. So, if like a tent is just coming back in, and they are like, oh, I'm really close to special, then they can just charge it up a little bit, and then they're like, okay, I can just like completely stay safe and just snipe people from across the map. And, I mean, they could do that. Or, if they're playing up front, and someone's like trying to get to them, and they're a little bit nervous, but then they get their special, they're like, oh wait, I have a very quick and a lot more reliable one-shot option. This is a strong as heck main weapon, combined with a sub that is very synergistic with it, combined with a special that is one of the strongest specials in the whole game, as far as I remember. I believe it has fallen off a little bit since I last played competitive, but the Trizuka is still super strong. And this is by far the best Brella in competitive. And you can already tell, it's my main. My opinion on this is, I love this thing so much. It's amazing. It took a long time to learn and figure out. It's really hard. Like, getting that one shot pretty consistently is hard. There's a little delay on when it actually, like, fires after you hit the button, which is hard to get used to. And all that, but once you learn it, oh, you are gonna be such a powerful player. You will feel the power. Like, this weapon, this is like the Brella that probably feels the most powerful, and simultaneously is the most powerful. Alright, next up. We have the Undercover Brella. So, the Undercover Brella has a very unique property. I'm gonna go ahead and switch to Splat Brella here for this. But the Undercover Brella has a very unique property. Every other Brella is able to launch their shield. Wundersweep. Wundersweep. Every other Brella is able to launch their shield. What makes this one unique is that no matter how long you hold down, it will never, ever launch the shield. I'm God's sleepy soul soldier, and it's time for snoozing. Thanks for teaching, entertaining, letting me hang out. Thank you for sticking around. For sticking around for so long. I really appreciate it. Hearts to you. I hope you get a good rest. But yeah, the Undercover Brella is the Brella that will never launch. This is very interesting, but it comes with a few caveats. For one, it's also one of the weakest Brella shields. It and recycled Brella are pretty close in terms of how flimsy their shields are. But especially because you can't launch the shield, it doesn't get that damage reduction multiplier. So, if you flare it up, it's gonna be gone pretty fast. Like that. See? it's not going to be the most reliable. On the plus side, though, to make up for it, it is also the most mobile. So you see, like here, we're able to move like this, and you get almost the full jump height with it. So you can jump up full distances. So this is how you move with this Brella. And this is how you move with this Brella. So the Undercover Brella is supposed to be the speedy, sort of the speedy type. That never really has to drop its shield if it doesn't want to. Now, the problem with that is you're gonna need to drop the shield. Either because it gets broken, because it's really flimsy, or to, like, regen it, because it's really flimsy. Like, you'll want to drop it so that I can regen. On the plus side, though, as you can see, if you just hold down the button, you're going to be able to, like, fire continuously with the shield up. So, like, this continuous fire, it's the fastest fire rate of any Brella. This makes the Undercover Brella very good for painting, actually. It's the one Brella that actually has a decent time painting. That actually has, like, a lot better time painting, really. Under ideal circumstances, it would be the one support Brella. However, as we're going to get into, the ideal scenario really is not the case here. When you get into the kits. As for the matchups, it's pretty standard fare, you know. Good matchups against shooters and dualies, though not really as much as, like, the Splat Brella. Because it plays the same, it just has, like, a weaker shield, and it's going to be painful a lot more. So this Brella actually doesn't want to fight quite as much. It still has the same bad matchups, and chargers will indeed one-shot this Brella. This Brella shield. Which, hey, if it has basically the same effect as the regular Splat Brella. If a charger hits the regular Splat Brella, it'll just dissipate and you won't take any of that damage. If it hits the Undercover Brella shield, it will just dissipate and you will not take any of that damage directly, no matter how much over the damage was for the charger. That's the nice thing about Brella shields. That's a nice property of Brella shields. Now, what we have right now is the vanilla kit. Undercover Brella, the vanilla Undercover, or as a lot of people in competitive call it, and as Axial, aka Blue, called it, Vunder. So, the Undercover Brella has a kit of Ink Mine and Reef Slider. We covered Ink Mine before, so we won't have to really tread over any new ground there. We kind of know those use cases. It's good to make sure that we don't get flanked and, like, set up for scouting or traps or anything like that. Though, I will say, Undercover actually does do a better job having it set up a trap for mines. So, like, let's say you have one here, and you're, like, luring, and you're, like, trying to lure them for an easy kill. But you know there you have a mine there. Because this Brella is more flexible, and you can actually, like, move backwards and sort of straight backwards, you're able to lure enemies into places that other Brellas really can't while having their shield up. The Splat Brella can lure people like this, it's just a lot harder. But Ink Mines are supposed to take advantage of that. I find them very fun to use. Now, Reef Slider. Reef Slider is a special where when you press R, you see these little paint tracks. You go across a certain place, you go a certain distance, and kaboom. This one... This one's a little weird. So, as far as I understand, this is outside of my knowledge base, but Reef Slider has become quite a popular special nowadays. Or at least more popular. It tends to be a little bit better than it was when I played. Because when I played, it was one of the worst specials in the game for the whole game. Like, basically the entire time. I'm not exactly sure what changed. But I will be doing the best of my ability to explain the synergies and what I think about this kit to you all. So I think this kit has some really interesting synergy. I'm not quite sure if... I think this kit has synergy, but I don't know if it plays out in practice. So like I said, the Ink Mine's case, you lay a trap, and then you like keep firing at a person and try to lure them back into the mine. Problem is, that's not super reliable. However, if you do a mine, it becomes a 2-shot, which is nice. But really what you're going to be wanting to do is paint, until you have your special. And Reef Slider, well, I don't know. I don't know how valuable of a special that is nowadays. The weird part about it is they had an idea. They had a pretty interesting idea. So because you go along this set track, you can then lift your shield up instantly to protect yourself once you're there. You know, that's pretty similar to how Inkjet was, right? For the Splat Brella? Well, the problem with that is that there's some end lag at the end of a Reef Slider. So that means that you will not have your shield out instantly, like you would with a Brella on a jetpack landing. So that kind of nearly ruins that plan. Especially if someone's like right on your case. Oh, and another part of Reef Slider that I forgot to mention is that if you press ZR early, you don't have to go the full distance, which is nice for mix-ups. If you see yourself going into danger, you can stop yourself, which is good. Overall, I think this kit has an interesting idea. However, I'm not sure the actual practice of it ends up being that good. I think Undercover itself as a main weapon is a little bit weak in comparison to its other Brella brethren. It tends to be good at painting, so making a fighting style kit like this is a little bit rough. But that's what I think about the vanilla Undercover Brella. Okay. Now that we got that out of the way, there's a little bit of an elephant in the room when it comes to this next Brella. So, I have to give a disclaimer here. The Sorella Undercover Brella, Undercover with Inkstorm would have been awesome. It would have. Any Brella with Inkstorm would have been awesome. So, okay, disclaimer time. There is one Brella that I will not be showcasing in a demo. This is that Brella. The reason is, it's special. It has a special of splatter color screen. So we will go over the special first. The no-no Brella. The no-no Brella. Let me just charge it up here. Splatter color screen is a special that when you press the right stick, you have this little sippy cup, and you throw it. And this big screen shows up. It's not like it's a wall or anything. both you and the enemy can pass through it and fire through it. But, you see these little bubbles that show up on the dummies? So when an enemy is hit with the splatter color screen, it changes the colors, and it has a little bit of a sizzling noise that happens in your game to sort of like, you know, distort your senses. The problem with this is that it apparently, from what I've seen from people who have certain disorders, there were reports of the special causing headaches and some other really bad effects visually and sound-wise. And while they addressed a certain element of it, because it was even worse on launch, at launch it was essentially like a flashbang. When you get hit with it, the screen would turn really, really bright, and that would really trigger like some people's visual disabilities, and the sizzling sound was still really loud, and so certain auditory disabilities would also be affected. They did not while they patched out the brightness of that one, they never patched out the sizzling sound. So to my understanding, there are still some people out there who experience headaches from the splatter color screen if they get hit with it. On top of that, it's also just a very unpleasant sound. Nintendo really messed up with this one. And as a result, this weapon will not be demoed. However, I do still intend to go over it here. Just to be a comprehensive guide. If you want to use this, use this Brella, but then never use a special, or whatever you want to do, I really can't stop you. So, the splatter color screen being on this weapon is a real shame, because the sub-weapon is Torpedo. Torpedo is an amazing sub-weapon for the Undercover Brella. Like, it's one of the best it could get. Again, the devs apparently understand Brellas fairly well, but then they just decided to use this one to have a screen to, like, showcase their new special. But Torpedo is a great sub-weapon for it. Torpedo, if you throw it into the air, it'll lock on to the nearest target and head straight for them, and then it'll explode like that. However, that's not the only thing it can do. If you roll on the ground, it won't lock onto anything, but you get a faster explosion. Both of these modes are very, very, very important. It works very well with Undercover, because the Torpedo, a property of the Torpedo is that if there's a torpedo in the air, you can actually shoot it down, and it'll become basically useless. That's normally pretty bad, but in Undercover's case, if someone's focused on the Torpedo, you can, like, come in, combo with it, and they'll have to, like, shoot the Torpedo. Hence, less fire on the shield, and hence, more time for you to get in and get the kill, even if the Torpedo doesn't land. Or, alternatively, you can get the 60 damage, and it'll combo for a one-shot, for a basically clean, quick kill. So I do not recommend using this weapon. On top of all the accessibility issues, splatter color screen is also really, really, really weak, as far as I understand it. It doesn't really do a whole lot of damage. The visual effects can kind of be circumnavigated if you are completely abled. Like, if you're completely like able-bodied. But in other instances, it will disproportionately affect you. And hence, it is the only special weapon to ever see any kind of restriction in the competitive community. I believe there are still restrictions to this day. But yeah. It's not very strong. The main weapon isn't strong enough to carry on its own. Torpedo is a strong start, but then also have like a not so strong special weapon is kinda damning. And with that, that's the undercovers. Does anyone have any questions before we get into the demos? We went through that one a little bit faster. Wow. I think I'm talking a little bit faster. We've got one more main weapon to talk about. It is the newest Brella. I need to turn off this. Hang on. There we go. Okay. So, the last of the Brellas. The recycled Brellas. So, we mentioned earlier that the Brella class had essentially kind of like two types of Brellas. You had the Brellas who want to like keep their shield on the Brella and like flare it out. And then the Brellas who want to launch their shield. This is the other one that launches the shield. This is the recycled Brella. The recycled Brella has a decent range. And its shield launches faster than any other Brella. And it paints more than most other Brellas. The tent might have it beat, but it goes faster. On top of that, it regens faster. So you can just launch these things back and forth and like you go with it. And you'll have a new one like pretty soon. You can still flare it. The timing is very tight though. So you will generally want to be launching it. Hearts to you. Hearts to you, puppy. So, it does get that general launching bonus. So I think technically when this shield is on the Brella, it is the weakest shield. However, when it's launched, it is a little bit less weak. And I think it's just a little bit stronger than Undercover, which kind of makes both of them the weakest shield. But then it's like, okay, if this one's focused on launching a shield, why use this one? Like, if you want to launch the shield, but it's like super flimsy, why would you use it? Like, you don't even get the mobility of the Undercover Brella. Well, the thing about this is, you see this little the rectangle in the middle, the reticles? This weapon has a tighter shot spread than any of the other Brellas. So it's actually a lot easier to consistently hit the two-shot. From even far away, like that. See, it's not even like that bad. It's just like if you're out of range and like only hit like a couple pellets because like the pellets are falling in a weird spot. But generally it's a lot easier to hit your shots for a consistent two-shot. So this shield launching and fast regen means you'll be able to move around a lot. You'll be able to poke people from further away. And you'll be able to like pester people with shields like a lot faster. So like you can just send this one out and then send that one out. You'll be like, oh, there's so many shields, what the heck? you want to be... This is the one Brella where you don't really want to get up close, like, ever. If you can help it, you don't really want to be getting too close. The shield's not going to protect you that well. So, like, keeping distance between you and your target will help it so that moving around will get you better results. So, generally, the matchup spread is still the same. All the Brellas tend to have fairly similar charts, just with better strengths and weaknesses. Like, Tenta Brella is going to work against the most kinds of weapons, and Recycle or Undercover would work against the least amount. But Recycled is a little bit unique, because it wants to be spacing more. You'll do a lot better against weapons that can't reach you at your maximum range. So, like, shorter range weapons, you're going to be able to do a lot better at, but you're going to do a whole lot worse with any weapon that is going to be any sort of longer range than you. Because then, you won't be able to poke them. And, like, you'll just be, like, sending your shield out, but then they'll just, like, shred it anyways, because it's so weak. The shield is kind of just more an annoyance and a movement tool. If you want to, like, move to a place, you generally want to have ink in your way. So, you launch this, and you just swim behind it. It'll paint for you. And you can and it'll protect you from the front for at least a little bit. You know, it's not useless. This is a very weird Brella. As for the kits, the current one we have right now is a kit of Angle Shooter and Big Bubbler. Both of these are new, so we will be talking about both of them. And points for special of 190. So, Angle Shooter. Angle Shooter is also a very weird sub. It's new to Splatoon 3, and essentially it has you doing that. It's the cheapest sub in the game. You can bounce it off walls, and it sends this little line out. If someone crosses the line, they get marked. And you can see them for a little bit. So it's good for, like, you know, poking around corners. However, if you hit someone directly... Hang on. The line does 40 damage. Like, the marker itself does 40 damage. But it will not do any damage if just the line hits it. You have to hit it directly. This sub... Yeah, we'll talk about it we'll talk about its quality in a second. I should probably talk about Big Bubbler. Big Bubbler is a special that has a lot of nice synergy with a Brella. So you might think, like, isn't it a bit redundant? Like, you already have shields. Why would you need another bigger shield? Well, that's the thing. It's another bigger shield on a Brella that doesn't really have a great shield. So, like, you pop it, and now suddenly they can't get you. Like, you move in a little bit with your shields, but then, like, they can't get you. Because you popped your Big Bubbler. And that's really all it does. You pop the Big Bubbler, it sets a giant dome, a giant shield in place, and it protects you. Now, what do I think of this kit? This is probably one of my least played Brella kits. I really, like, if I'm in the mood for an Angle Shooter, I'll play it. But the Angle Shooter is kind of really keeping this one down. Big Bubbler is actually a fairly strong special. It protects against Trizooka and Inkjet really, really well. It's pretty weak to Tri-Strikes, but it protects against a lot of specials. Crab Tank, for instance, it'll protect you for a little bit. And it'll protect you against a lot of weapons. pretty much every weapon. So, you know? The problem here is kind of the main weapon itself. So, since Recycled's kind of like pretty average at painting, it's kind of like on par with the Brellas that are not undercover. And since the spread is so tight and the shield is so flimsy, the main concern is if someone gets, like, comes from the outside and gets into your big bubbler, are you gonna be able to keep them out? Now, Recycled Brella does not want people even getting that close at all. So if people get that close, you're probably screwed. Really, Big Bubbler is probably best used with your teammates who can utilize this a lot better. I've often theorized that if Tenta Brella ever got, like, a Big Bubbler, then that would be a very strong threat. If not, maybe a little bit hard to use. But as it stands, this is a pretty middle-of-the-road kit. A not too powerful main weapon with the worst sub-weapon in the game, mixed with a pretty good special, like a really good special. It can't really paint enough to get it. Super consistently, so that's that. Then for the second kit, the Recycled Brella Mach 2. It's not a Sorella. There's no Sorellas in sight for the undercovers. Every single other second kit was a Sorella. This is a Mach 2. It had to be special. The first one was Mach 1, so it makes sense. It's more so mimicking the naming conventions of the Bamboozler, which existed before it. Bamboozler Mach 2 and Bamboozler Mark 1. Actually, wait. Let's look at it. The Recycled Brella Mach 2 comes with Toxic Mist and Triple Splashdown. And here's the description. So, what does Toxic Mist do? Toxic Mist, if you throw it, it'll throw out this little cloud bubble, and it'll slow the enemy down, and also drain their ink tank. So they will have less ink while they're in it, and they will move slower, so that it is easier to hit them. That's basically it. It doesn't really have any other functionality. It's not gonna keep people out of a space, like, for good, like a bomb will. It's not gonna mark people like an ink mine would. Or like a line marker would. I mean, angle shooter. The special is Triple Splashdown. Triple Splashdown is an upgrade of a Splatoon 2 special. And when you activate it, you leap up into the air, summon 2 fists, and crash back down. Looks pretty cool. But kind of like Reef Slider in the early days, it was kinda tough to use. It's not exactly the strongest thing in the world. It's not the weakest thing in the world. It does come out pretty fast now, and the damage it does is significant. Oftentimes you want to use the Splashdown as a good get-off-me option, you know? Like, like, oh, shoot, someone's rushing me down. Pop. Bam. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that when you're in splashdown, you are not invulnerable. People can shoot you down while you go up into the air and wait to crash back down. That is the biggest weakness of this special. However, in Splatoon 2, there weren't even those two fists. So the special was even worse. Now, what do the two fists really do? The two fists that launch up in the air, they act as a little bit of insurance. So instead of just yourself launching up and the whole special canceling if someone shoots you down, instead, people have to work a lot harder to knock the special down. So if they still get you, then they have to deal with the fists. It is possible to shoot down all three before they go off. So it is possible to cancel, but the window is super, super tight. So you will get some damage. It just depends. It also just kind of is a dice roll whether or not you stay alive to capitalize on that damage. And we got a question. What's your favorite non-Brella weapon? That's a tough one. That's kind of a tough one. I feel like the obvious answer is 52 Gal. With Splash Wall and Killer Whale. Recently, I've been playing a lot of mini splatling, which is really fun. I love mini splatling. There's a lot of weapons I like. Gluga dualies are fun. Regular dualies are fun. I love pretty much all the splatlings. I adore them all. All the buckets are good. Oh, multiplayer map. Of course, less mean with like the 52 Gal. What do you mean? You don't even know. What do you mean? Oh, Gal. Right. No, I get you. Gotcha. The Gal. Yeah. Multiplayer map update. But, it would probably be the 52 Gal. That was the weapon I made first. And I played it for so long that it's just kind of second nature to me. It's a comfort weapon. But, really, I've kind of fallen off it a lot. So currently, I would say mini splatling, but overall, I would probably say 52 Gal. But alright. What about synergy, then? So, for Recycled Brella, Mach 2. Toxic Mist is okay. Really, Toxic Mist, it's kind of hard for it to have synergy with a lot of stuff. But because this Brella relies on spacing more, it helps you get your aim a little bit better, and it helps trap people a little bit. It's not that strong, though. So, it's really not going to do you many favors. I really don't use it that often when I play this Brella. The thing I do use, though, is triple splashdown, because, like, here, let me clear the map again. Let's say you see, like, a group of enemies, and you want to get in. So, you use the shield, and they'll be like, oh, let's shoot at it. But then, like, boom. Go behind the shield, and you pop up, and bam. And then when you land back down, boom, you have shield. And you can, like, get out of there if you need to. Or you can protect from an enemy. But, like... yeah, it's not the strongest thing in the world, but I do think there are some interesting ideas with it. The Recycled Brella really kind of takes advantage... oh. The Recycled Brella kind of takes advantage of the shield being launched. But it kind of takes advantage of the shield being launched and you going with it, which I kind of think is the wrong idea, personally. The way the kits are designed, though, I think that's how they kind of intended you to do it. Have it be like tank. You go in with the shield, get your kills, and then boom. There you go. Any questions?